Welcome to another episode, everyone. Let's meet the real 50 Cent, because 50 Cent took his name from someone else, just like Rick Ross did, a real figure in the street. He was only 5'2", but he robbed LL Cool J, Houdini, and Rakim until his friend was forced to kill him. This is the real 50 Cent.
These individuals right here, okay, right now you see the Puerto Rican guy, that's Rap. And you see the other guy, that's 50 Cent. And the notorious 50 Cent.
It's a lot of people walking around now with scars on them because of 50. Them took losses because of 50. And some people ain't here because of 50.
Before Curtis Jackson ever became 50 Cent, who was the first man to own that? Name, Kelvin Martin, 5'2", 120 pounds. 2 long barrel handguns in his waistband, a .357 and a Colt .45.
Man, I mean, this boy was so fierce that he had 2 long barrel revolvers with him, trademark. Always had him. He was like a modern day gunslinger.
In 1980s New York, he robbed LL Cool J for his gold rope in a White Castle parking lot, snatched jewelry off members of Houdini, ran a protection racket where he was both the threat and the insurance. Then showed up on the back cover of Eric B. and Rakim's Paid in Full album, standing right next to the same rappers his crew had been terrorizing.
50 Cent was...
That's Rakim, Eric B. and Rakim. AI.
Anybody and everybody, your next door neighbor, the guy you hear about, the street legend, your friend, what I'm saying, your brother. It's so many different 50 Cents, you don't know which one came to the party.
On October 20th, 1987, someone came for him, shot in a Crown Heights stairwell, dead at 23 after 4 days in the hospital. The trigger? A teenager who claimed he was kidnapped and forced to do it. So who really wanted Kelvin Martin gone? And how did his name end up becoming one of the biggest brands in hip-hop history? Let's get into it. Kelvin Darnell Martin was born on July 24th, 1964, in the South Bronx. People in the neighborhood called him Lil Shaft. His parents separated when he was around 8 years old, and according to family members, his mother pinned a note to his shirt, put him on a city bus, and sent him across New York to live with his grandmother, Irene Martin, in a Puerto Rican neighborhood in the Bronx. The arrangement didn't last. Eventually, the family relocated to Brooklyn, and Martin ended up in Unit 11H of Building A in the Monument Walk section of the Raymond Veer Ingersoll houses, the Fort Greene projects.
Kelvin Martin actually grew up here in the Ingersoll houses, which is right next to the Walt Whitman houses on Myrtle Avenue.
This was the late 1970s. New York City was broke. Factories had closed. City services had been slashed. Fort Greene was one of the hardest hit neighborhoods in Brooklyn. Martin chose the streets early. By his late teens, he'd caught his first charges street. Hustling, petty stick-ups, the kind of low-level crimes that were practically a write-up. Passage in Fort Greene during the late 70s. But what set Martin apart, even then, was a specific detail that would define his entire career. He never tried to hide who he was. No mask, no alias during jobs. He robbed people face to face and dared them to say something about it. Martin assembled a crew of teenagers out of the Fort Greene projects and called them the Brooklyn Zoo. Their operation was simple: rob anyone, anywhere, by any means necessary, but the scale of it was something else entirely. The Brooklyn Zoo hit nightclubs. They ran through the Latin Quarter in Manhattan, one of hip-hop's most famous venues in the mid-80s. They hit Harlem World. They hit the Roxy. The move was always the same. Roll into the club, identify partygoers wearing gold chains and carrying designer bags, and strip them on the way out. The crew fenced the stolen jewelry and designer purses for cash afterward. In Brooklyn, it was the same pattern at different locations. The Brooklyn Armory, the Empire Skating Rink, Albee Square Mall. If a crowd gathered...
Of course, you had a lot of crews like that back in the days everywhere that would hit these clubs, rob the club, rob strip clubs. Now you have these crews hitting these dispensaries. You have to be careful when you're going out. I heard a lot about this individual here, 50 Cent. I knew that 50 Cent got his name from someone. I heard about him years ago. Actually, this individual here, when I was in prison, knew some of his story, but not all of his story. But heard that he was a vicious individual. But there are some individuals saying that individuals were not necessarily afraid of this individual, like the narrator is here saying. He had his respect in the street, but they were saying that individuals would fight back against this individual here, 50 Cent. I don't know. Of course, as we heard, he ends up getting killed at the age of 23 years old by his own friend.
Somewhere in Fort and Greene or the surrounding neighborhoods, the Brooklyn Zoo showed up to work. Martin once went to a Rick James concert at the Meadowlands in East Rutherford, New Jersey, not to see the show. He went specifically to rob fans in the crowd. While most of Fort Greene was trying to get into the crack trade, Martin wanted nothing to do with it. His targets were the dealers themselves. Stash houses, dealers carrying cash. The logic was straightforward. The drug money was already counted, already bundled, and the victims couldn't exactly go to the police. On top of the robberies, Martin built a protection racket. He'd approach store owners and drug dealers in the neighborhood and offer to keep them safe from violence and vandalism. The ones who paid, he left alone. The ones who didn't, Martin would send his crew to rob them, break their windows, run off their customers. He was selling protection from himself. After a stint in prison, Martin came back to Brooklyn and aligned himself with a local crew connected to a Supreme team set based in Fort Greene, not the famous Jamaica. Queens operation run by Kenneth McGriff, but a Brooklyn set that shared the name. The added muscle expanded his reach beyond Fort Greene, and the consequences of all this were written on his body. Over the course of his career, Kelvin Martin was stabbed multiple times and shot at least 24 times across 9 separate incidents.
Damn.
He survived every single one until the last, despite
Shot 24 times over 9 separate incidents. So he got shot 9 separate times, adding up to 24 total wounds. This individual put 3 in him. This individual shot him once. This individual shot him twice, adding up to 24 bullet wounds in his body by 9 different incidents, 9 different situations. And he survived all of them. This individual got 9 lives. He survived all of them until he didn't. Until the last one, his friend. I'm interested to see how his friend was forced to kill him. This is what the headline says, that his friend was forced to kill him. She's 5'2" though. Has a lot of people apparently afraid for their lives around the Bronx. 5'2". And survived 25 gunshot wounds. This dude had 9 lives.
never being indicted for murder. People in the neighborhood attributed as many as 30 bodies to him. The robberies that turned Kelvin Martin from a neighborhood menace into a borough-wide legend weren't the ones that paid the most. They were the ones involving the biggest names in hip-hop. The most well-known incident involved LL Cool J. In the mid-1980s, LL was becoming a star. I Can't Live Without My Radio had dropped in 1985, and his debut album Radio was making him one of hip-hop's first crossover acts. According to multiple accounts, Martin approached a teenage James Todd Smith in the parking lot of a White Castle restaurant in Brooklyn and took his solid gold rope chain at gunpoint. Some accounts say Martin later gave the chain to his daughter.
And even caught LL Cool J parking lot pimping in a White Castle in Brooklyn, where he ran up on Mr. Smith for his solid gold rope.
Then there were the Houdini robberies. In the mid-80s, Houdini was one of the biggest rap groups in the country. Friends, Freaks Come Out at Night, 5 Minutes of Funk. They were selling out arenas and pushing records. Martin and his crew robbed members of the group anyway. The Rakim situation was more complicated. For years, the street story was that Martin snatched Rakim's signature gold medallion, the big round piece from the photos and music videos, right off his neck. But according to people from the neighborhood, that specific version of the story was exaggerated. What wasn't exaggerated was Martin's actual relationship with Rakim's circle. Martin became close with Eric Barrier, Eric B., and through that friendship, he became a member of the Paid in Full posse, the crew that surrounded Eric B. and Rakim. In 1987, when Eric B. and Rakim released their debut album Paid in Full, Martin appeared in the photo on the back cover, standing in front of the Jacob Javits Center alongside Eric B., Rakim, Cool G Rap, and a handful of other Brooklyn and Queens figures. That's the contradiction that defined Kelvin Martin. He was robbing hip-hop artists and running with them at the same time.
But Rakim, he's about to have me calling him Rakim. It's Rakim. He has denied this in previous videos. You can find the footage. He has denied that this individual ever robbed him. I believe 50 Cent came out and said that that wasn't true as well, but Rakim certainly said, for the record, that this individual never robbed him. LL Cool J and Houdini, I don't know, but the Bronx tale is that he indeed robbed LL Cool J, but that he did not rob Rakim. But he was out there indeed robbing individuals. As you can see, individuals just going to a club or whatever. You got your designer on, you got your jewelry on, you got a little bread with you, you heading to the club. The women got their little purses, etc. Designer. Him and his crew coming in there while y'all in there dancing, chilling and drinking, having fun, hooking up, and laying everything down and taking everything from the individuals that are patronizing the club. Not robbing the club, but the people inside of the club.
Next to the culture's biggest names in photos while his crew was still running through the same nightclubs those artists performed at. There are multiple stories about how Kelvin Martin got the nickname 50 Cent. The most common version ties back to his robbery philosophy. He'd rob anyone for anything, even if all they had was 50 cents. Another version says he once walked into a dice game with 50 cents in his pocket and walked out with $500. And some people in the neighborhood say it was a reference to his size. $50 for a man who stood 5'2" and weighed 120 pounds. Whatever the origin, the name—
Okay, so it got three different versions, three different stories as to how he came across the name 50 Cent. Do any of you know? Let me know in the comments. How did he get the name 50 Cent? Some say, as the narrator said, it's because of his size and so forth. I don't know.
Carried weight in Brooklyn. When people in Fort Greene said 50 Cent, they were talking about the little guy with two long-barrel guns who robbed in broad daylight and never bothered to cover his face. That reputation is what drew Curtis Jackson to the name years later, when the rapper from South Jamaica, Queens, was looking for a stage name in the late 1990s. He chose 50 Cent deliberately. Jackson later said, "I picked the name because it says everything. I wanted to say, I'm the same kind of person 50 Cent was. I provide for myself by any means." The choice carried extra weight because of the connection to Kenneth Supreme McGriff. Curtis Jackson would go on to become one of McGriff's most vocal enemies, recording a track called Ghetto Quran that detailed Supreme's criminal operations by name.
Supreme was the businessman and Prince was the killer.
By taking the name of a Brooklyn robber who'd operated in the same era and circles as McGriff's associates, Jackson was planting a flag in territory that Supreme considered his own. By the fall of 1987, Kelvin Martin had made enough enemies to fill a room. Drug dealers he'd robbed, store owners he'd extorted, crews he'd crossed. When someone robs indiscriminately for years and never once tries to hide his face while doing it, the list of people who want that person gone gets long. Martin had been staying with his girlfriend, Precious Golston, at her apartment in the Albany Houses, a housing project in the Crown Heights section of Brooklyn. On the evening of October 20th, 1987, Julio Waymo Acevedo, a teenager from the neighborhood, came by the apartment. He and Martin left together around 10 p.m. A resident found 23-year-old Kelvin Martin on the 7th floor landing, bleeding from gunshot wounds to the head, chest, and stomach. He was rushed to Kings County Hospital, where he held on for 4 days. On October 24th, 1987, Kelvin Darnell Martin, the original 50 Cent, died from hemorrhaging. He was 23.
Damn, from hemorrhaging, he was 23 years old. Got gunshot wounds to the head, neck, and chest. Someone wanted him gone. 5'2", 23 years old, 1987. Never got a chance to really live his life. Damn, never got a chance to get out there, to be successful, to expand, to live. Oh, man. Damn. You got to be careful, though, man. We live by the sword. We die by the sword oftentimes. Sometimes good guys die when they're not supposed to. It seems like individuals who are horrible people live on. But every dog has its day. Everyone's day is coming. But don't precipitate it, but by how you're carrying yourself out here.
3 years old, a man who'd been shot 24 times across 9 separate incidents and survived every one, taken out in the stairwell of his girlfriend's building. Julio Acevedo didn't act on his own, according to testimony that emerged during the legal proceedings. He was forced into it. A drug dealer turned government informant named Richard Bush later testified about the plot. According to Bush, local dealers who'd had enough of Martin's robberies, and extortion kidnapped Acevedo and his cousin. The terms were simple. Bush laid it out in his testimony. So we told Acevedo, you go up there and bring 50 downstairs in the hallway. You're going to kill 50, or we're going to kill your cousin. Acevedo was a teenager. He went up to Golston's apartment, got Martin to leave with him, and shot him in the stairwell of the Albany houses. Acevedo himself later confirmed the coercion. My family was going to be killed. I was going to be killed, he said. I was kidnapped, beaten, tortured. He was initially convicted of murder and sentenced to 20 years to life, but after Bush's testimony corroborated the kidnapping claim, a judge overturned the conviction. Acevedo accepted a reduced charge of first-degree manslaughter and was eventually released after serving roughly a decade.
The district attorney pointed to Acevedo's long rap sheet and the move for a manslaughter charge. Among a number of crimes, the defendant served a decade in prison for manslaughter.
The story of Julio Acevedo didn't end when he walked out of prison.
Is that true? Is that what happened? Apparently so. The judge believes so. He overturned his conviction. He just ended up serving 10 years, dropped it down to a manslaughter after convicting him for murder and sentencing him to 20 years to life in prison. They come up with this story that he was kidnapped, tortured, beaten, and his family's lives threatened if he did not unalive 50 Cent. So he did it. I guess they're saying because he was cool with him, he was his friend, and he can lure him out of the house. That's why they put him up to doing it, because I'm wondering why they didn't just do it themselves. If you're willing to kill his cousin, then you're willing to commit murder. Then why not? And if you want 50 Cent gone this bad yourself, why not just do it yourself? Why have someone else do it with the threat of killing his family? If you're willing to kill his family, then why are you not willing to kill 50 Cent? I don't know. It sounds a little off to me. Unless it's just because they know that he was friends with 50 Cent, knew 50 Cent, and can get him outside from his girlfriend's house. Whereas if they pulled up, he would not come out. He's been robbing them and all that. This is why they want him gone. So perhaps that's be the only thing that I can think of. But okay, damn. So he was convicted, got 20 years to life in prison, and then ended up coming home over this.
On March 3rd, 2013, more than 25 years after he killed Kelvin Martin, Acevedo was behind the wheel of a BMW, speeding northbound on Kent Avenue in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, doing approximately 70 miles per hour, blowing past other cars and switching lanes. At the intersection of Wilson Avenue, he slammed into a livery cab. The backseat passengers were Nachman Glauber, 21, and his wife Razy, also 21. Razy was 7 months pregnant. Both were killed on impact.
Damn.
Their unborn son, Tanchum, was delivered alive via emergency surgery, but died the following day.
What do you want to say to the victims' families?
Once again, I apologize. I can't stress remorse no more than I have. I have stressed it to you several times already. It's not, I can't bring him back.
Acevedo jumped out of the BMW, looked at the wreckage, and ran. He fled New York entirely. 5 days later, on March 7th, the NYPD's warrant squad arrested him in Pennsylvania. During the coverage of the hit and run, reporters dug into Acevedo's background and uncovered his connection to the Kelvin Martin murder. The man who'd killed the original 50 Cent was back in the headlines, this time for killing a young Orthodox Jewish couple and their baby. Brooklyn Supreme Court Justice Neil Feiertag sentenced Acevedo to 25 years to life in prison, 2 counts of second-degree manslaughter, 1 count of criminally negligent homicide, and 2 counts of leaving the scene. Because of his prior criminal history, he was classified as a persistent felony offender, which triggered the enhanced sentence. Kelvin Martin lived 23 years. In that time,
Dang, this is crazy, the way these stories be taking these twists and turns. And that's just how life is. I remember seeing a story, well, I'm not going to get into that, but it comes back on you one way or another. This man done got out. So basically, if he'd have had a life sentence, which he did at first for the murder of 50 Cent, then those 3 individuals would still be alive. But he got out, he was blessed, he came home, ended up getting reduced to a manslaughter, and then gets behind the wheel. I'm going to assume that he was drinking. I don't know. I'm not sure if he said that he was drinking and driving. Probably. I mean, I don't know. He had the wherewithal to get out of the car and run, but he didn't run into the back of a car. A couple just sitting in a car driving home. husband and wife pregnant, 7 months. They just chilling, leaving home, and just left a restaurant in a cab. And this dude then ran them all over, then ran it to the back of the cab and killed them on sight, on impact. They probably didn't see it coming, didn't hear no crash, nothing. They looking ahead driving, and then it just happens from the back of them. They never had a chance. That's good. That can be any of us. And then she was pregnant, and they did an emergency. Oh man, tried to save the baby, delivered the baby, and then the baby died the next day. Killed all 3 people. Damn. He ended up getting 25 to life for that. Got that reduced down to manslaughters and all that. He can still come home at some point. This is 4 lives now because 50 Cent, they didn't took him out. He didn't took him out, admitted to that. But I don't know, how remorseful was he? He said, I'm remorseful. I told you several times. What more can I say? Well, say it again and again and again. That's what you can say. Keep saying it. Every time you're asked a question, answer it. Because 3 people are gone, including the baby.
He became one of the most feared figures in Brooklyn, a 5'2" stick-up kid from the Fort Greene projects who robbed rappers at White Castle, terrorized nightclubs from Manhattan to Brooklyn, ran a protection racket that preyed on the same dealers he was already robbing, and got shot 24 times across 9 separate incidents without dying. The drug dealers he'd been preying on for years arranged his death, and the person they chose to carry it out, a teenager named Julio Acevedo, was kidnapped and given a choice between pulling the trigger and watching his cousin die. Most people who hear the name 50 Cent think of Curtis Jackson, Get Rich or Die, Tryin' in Dog Club, G-Unit, Power TV show promo, The Vitamin Water Deal, one of the most successful entertainers to ever come out of hip-hop. The name came from a real person, a 5'2" Brooklyn robber who carried a .357 Magnum and a Colt .45, who took LL Cool J's chain and gave it to his daughter, who stood on the back cover of Paid in Full with the same artists his crew was robbing, and who died on a 7th floor landing in the Albany houses at 23. Curtis Jackson said he picked the name because it represented someone willing to provide for himself by any means. The original 50 Cent story didn't end with a billion-dollar brand. It ended with 3 gunshot wounds and 4 days in Kings County Hospital. The name survived.
Yeah, the name survived. But he did not, because when we live by the sword, we die by the sword. I don't know him. I don't know him personally. I don't know his situation. Just going by the narrative and the things that I've heard about this individual back in the past, again, committing all of these robberies. And they said that he was responsible, what they say, 23 murders, 30 murders or something in the area, terrorizing. And that's what happens. Yeah, if that is true, then yeah, that eventually would be the outcome. People get tired of being robbed by you. You're out there robbing all of the drug dealers. They're out here hustling to get their money illegally. Call it what you want. It's theirs. They're doing it. And then you just come and they do all of this hard work, get this money, and then you just come by and do no work. Just put a gun in their face and take all of their last year's worth of work. And yeah, eventually they get sick of that and say, man, somebody got to get this dude. He out here, he's causing harm to everyone. It's one thing if one person wants you and is after you, but when you got multiple people after you, it's just a matter of time. Someone is going to crash out and take care of the business. Someone, eventually. Oh, man. Rest in peace, that individual. Rest in peace to 50 Cent. This dude, Acevedo, though, damn. And he got away with it, basically doing 10 years, and then come home and run these people down in the car and end up getting a life sentence. It's just, the streets have ended well for absolutely no one. I mean, who wins? Who wins in the street? When it's all said and done, no matter what part of the street you take, who comes out on top? Who's on top? No one. Okay, well, there you have it. I got a little bit deeper perspective about who this individual here is, 50 Cent. As I said, I heard about him in the past and really know his story from New York. I am not, though my mother is. Okay, let me know what you think in the comments. Stay safe and stay free.